Thinking about moving to London, Ontario, Canada, or just want to know what it's like to live there, or thinking about vacationing there, visiting someone there, or have to go there for work? This is the episode for you. You can see beside me, I have Dania Parker-Smith, Realtor with New Vista. Why can't I bring my thing up with New Vista Premier Realty beside me? This is Wanna Move There, the show dedicated to giving Central Pennsylvanians the info they need to decide whether or not they want to move somewhere else. So if you're thinking about moving to an area, hopefully you can find an episode for you that will tell you a little bit about that area and introduce you to an awesome agent and tour guide. Agents are the best tour guides. That's why I'm having them all on here. They all know their area very well. So this is the goal of the show. I am your host, DerekBicksler, Realtor of 15 years. I grew up on the hill in Harrisburg, went to Mechanicsburg High School, go Wildcats, and went up to Penn College of Technology up in Williamsport. Been back here ever since, had a few sales jobs before I started selling real estate 15 glorious years ago. If you need to buy or sell a home, please contact me. Call, text, email, throw a rock through my window, send a carrier pigeon, whatever you need to do. We still need inventory pretty bad, and we're going to ask what it's like up in Canada when we get into it with Dania, if it's as crazy up there. Has died down slightly, so if you're a buyer, good time to get out there and start looking again. A reminder that all the replays are on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, iTunes, Spotify. Not soon on those places. It's on there when the episode drops. I got to delete that soon thing. So wherever you like to consume your content, you can find it there. And a reminder, I skipped it. Whether you're watching live or on a replay, please ask a question in the comments. If we don't see it while we're going, we will come back and address it later. Or if you just know one of us, say hi and tell us where you are watching or listening from. And now I will shut up and let's bring Dania in. Say hi to everybody while I bring up your bio, and then I'm going to read your bio and we'll get into it. So say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you guys. Dania Parker-Smith in London, Ontario, and I also work all around in the surrounding areas of southwestern Ontario. So there you go.
Yes, I was debating whether or not to put the southwestern Ontario in there, but then it gets too wordy for certain things. So I left it on London, but we can talk about that a little bit. And I'm going to bring up the map here in a second. And so I'm going to read your bio and give everybody a little bit of background on you. And then we will elaborate on some of these things because there are some things in your bio that stand out to me particularly. Number one being that you grew up in British Columbia. Whistler is on my next stop list on my bucket list for mountain biking. Last couple of years, it's been hard to get there. So hopefully in the next year or so, I can get there. You did grow up in British Columbia. You went to high school in Christian school in Cranbrook. And would have that been in British Columbia?
Yes, that is. That's in the Rocky Mountains, right in the Rocky Mountains.
Awesome. And then you went to college in Kamloops, Sprott, Shaw, and Oria. I feel like last Canadian person I had on, there were a lot of words that were hard to pronounce. And now I'm thinking, are there a lot of Native American tribes, or are things named after that kind of thing up there? Or what are all these? What's Kamloops?
Well, I don't know where the Sprott Shaw comes from. That one's like it's a private kind of college that specializes in business stuff. Sorry, excuse me. But the OREA is the Ontario Real Estate Association. So that is my real estate stuff that we had to take courses. Now switched to Humber College, but for us people who were there before the college and with OREA shut down, that's where we took our schooling.
And in college, you went for law, clerking, office management, and real estate, like you mentioned. Your favorite color is pink. Man, I think last episode was not pink, but the 3 preceding episodes, I think, were pink. So you're on the pink train. I think the break was purple. So a lot of pink, 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 purple, pink. And here we're pink again. And then popcorn, which stood out to me also. British Columbia and the popcorn thing, because I pretty much have popcorn beside me in my car at all times. It's my drive around snack. We realtors, we drive around a lot. And this is my snack. Somewhat healthy. I do the lightly salted. How do you do yours?
Oh gosh. Well, I take the somewhat healthy to the little bit to the bad side because I love my popcorn with butter halfway up and on the top. That's how I say it.
Like movie theater? Like you would buy the movie theater butter one?
Yep. They say, do you want
Nice.
butter? I say halfway up and on the top, please.
Just make sure you have a big old drink with that one right beside
That's
it, right? Yeah, totally. I'm with you there. I like the crunch of it, the texture of it, everything about it, other than even the taste is, I love popcorn. It's something about it. Mm-hmm. You do have pets. You do have kids, 6, a blended family of 6. So 6 kids, that doesn't include you.
No.
And what are the ages of them?
So my eldest daughter is 33 today. It's her birthday. So she's 33. She's the oldest of our six. So we have four from me and two from my husband. And I start at the top and he ends at the bottom. So we have six, 30, 31, 28, 27, and 26. I think that's how it goes.
Wow. Are there any grandchildren yet?
Oh, many.
Many.
We have 8 grandchildren. 7 of them are girls and 1 of them is a boy.
That's awesome. Are they close to you or do they live elsewhere?
They're all within an hour of us, yes.
Wow. So do you do a lot of babysitting or traveling or?
So we try and mix it up a bit. I have one daughter that lives in town here and she has 4 kids. So I do a lot with her. But the rest of them, we kind of take them as, little bits here and there. Every couple of weeks I see them and, I try and have alone time with each of them, but it can get overwhelming because that's a lot of kids and I could spend my day going from child to grandchild, and not
start a grandma daycare.
Yeah. Sometimes they come with me to showings and, took my 3-year-old granddaughter to a listing appointment the other week because we didn't get a sitter. She was with me. She sunk me the deal.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do. And sometimes that will kind of seal the deal and get you some brownie points with that client. And then your hobbies, well, you're married to Kevin. Kevin's your husband's name. And your hobbies are writing, kayaking, cooking, and gardening. So the writing part, well, I like the kayaking part and the cooking part and the gardening part, actually. But the writing intrigues me because we actually do, as realtors, maybe you don't do your own, but we do a fair bit of writing. We write a lot of emails, we write contracts and language, but we also write copy for MLS listings, which is my least favorite thing to do in the whole listing process, probably. Does your writing as a hobby help you in copywriting? Do you do that yourself?
So I find writing, interestingly enough, I try and find for copyright for my MLS for my listings, I find a little monotonous sometimes, so trying to find ways to spice it up. I think as somebody who does love to write, I love to write my stories of my life experiences down because I think they're important. And I think I've had a pretty interesting life and a pretty intriguing life. And it is a book in the works, but it's just going to take some time to get it all to the place where I can get it to an editor because I think when you've experienced things in your life, sometimes it brings up a lot of emotion and you kind of tend to relive some things, right?
Totally. So now let's talk a little bit about, I want to back it up back to the British Columbia days because, I have to hear about this. I said I told you, did I say that on air or before on air? That it's on my bucket list, Whistler, or anywhere in British Columbia, really. Where were you there and what was it like? Were you skiing? Were you doing all that outdoor stuff?
Well, I grew up in Cranbrook, British Columbia, which is a small community right in the Rocky Mountains. It's kind of just a hop, skip, and a jump from Banff and Jasper National Parks, the big, and Lake Louise. So a few hours from there, Kootenay National Park, that's another park. They're all kind of congregated and butt up against each other. So I grew up there, but interestingly enough, my father was very much of a mountain man, and he loved to be outdoors. We did a lot of things hiking, but his 4x4ing was his world. And we as a family spend a lot of time out in the bush, 4x4ing, being stuck in rivers and pulling ourselves out. And his motto to life was, as long as we have 3 wheels on the ground, it doesn't matter where the 4th one is, which was a little bit concerning sometimes. But when I was 12, my parents literally moved off the grid. And I grew up for my teenage years, living a pretty different life than a lot of kids my age, where I didn't have a telephone and TV and cable and indoor plumbing.
That sounds like a dream to me. Most people are like, yeah, that does sound terrible, but I would like that. but I'm weird a little bit that way. So I brought the map up here. You saw me
Yes.
share the screen. And for those that listening, we've got a map up here and I will describe it a little bit. So how do you pronounce it? What was it? Cranbrook?
Yes.
Cranbrook is right above Idaho and Montana, kind of right across the border of the U.S. on the western side, a little bit below west of Calgary. Isn't
Yes.
Calgary's one of the biggest cities in Canada?
Calgary it's the closest one to us. So if there was any sort of big major things that you needed to do, it's about 4 hours to Calgary to drive.
Gotcha. Yeah, and you can see that there's mountains all around there, so it looks like an awesome place. Snowed a lot, I'm guessing.
Yes and no, because it's more of the south end of the province. Yes, a lot of snow, probably more than what you had. But, I guess when you've experienced a lot of snow, because I lived for 10 years in northern British Columbia up near mile zero of the Alaska Highway, then, a lot more snow up there and a lot colder.
So what is that? Describe the highway a little bit for those that aren't familiar.
Alaska Highway is nothing. It's just a 2-lane road, one this way, one that way. It's like
up into just across the cold plains of.
Yeah, well, mile zero of the Alaska Highway literally starts in a little community of probably, I think, about 10 or 15,000 people called Dawson Creek, and not Dawson's Creek, Dawson Creek.
I was going to ask.
And it literally, there's this where the highways connect, there's this little centerpiece where it's got a monument in the middle, and that literally is the start of the Alaska Highway. So when I lived up in northern British Columbia, which was a little ways away from there, I lived in Mackenzie and Chetwynd, about 1 out of every 3 cars on the road during the summer and the fall were coming or going they were US plates coming or going to Alaska. So a lot of RVs, fifth wheels, trailers, people going up to Alaska with lots of jerry cans on the back of their car because there's not a lot of gas.
Okay. So it's the main highway that takes you from the U.S. up to Alaska, and that's where all the through traffic goes.
Well,
then I was looking at, go ahead.
Yeah, somewhat. You would go up there and connect onto that highway and go. Yeah. Gotcha.
And it looks like I was looking at the map. And I'll bring up we can get into talking about what it's like in the climate since we're starting to talk about that anyway already. But I'm going to bring up another map here. So it looks like Canada as a whole, it seems like when you zoom out here, you've got all the major roads are down at the bottom, or the major highways go east to west. And then the further up north, I guess it gets too cold, so most of the population of Canada is down here closer to the U.S. border.
Yeah, there's just not a lot up there. It's a lot of muskeg and different things like that when you're talking about, extreme weathers and stuff. Majority of the population lives in the lower half of the province. I would say probably 80% of or 90% of the population lives from about just over halfway up the province down to the south. So you have a lot of area that's not really inhabited, or it could be, I'm sure, but people don't like to live up there. It's a lot. And the more you have to transport goods, the more expensive it becomes.
Sure, yeah. The more remote, Alaska, Hawaii, all those places, everything gets super expensive. And you look
at places and just over into Alberta, like Fort McMurray, which is a gas and the oil sands, where people always hear about the oil sands in Canada. And that's really a very expensive place to live and to reside, because it's so, you have to bring everything in. There's nothing there being made. There's no manufacturing. So it's the same as in the northern parts of Canada, where there's just not that manufacturing. So everything along the bottom is where we have all the interactions with the United States and all the different provinces and the trucking and the railways, right?
Right. And then the harsh environment there too just makes everything harder to deal with, I'm sure. And we can see here, but what?
It's not Siberia.
It's pretty cold though, isn't it? I mean, I've seen alone seasons in Canada up there somewhere.
It can be. It can get cold. Where I live now, it seems like a dream compared to where I used to live, when it was so cold in the winter that the bottoms of your tires would freeze flat.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into where you are now. And you are kind of, London is somewhat enveloped by the U.S. It kind of sits on that part of Canada that comes down into the U.S. around the Great Lakes there. And for those of you who can see the screen and that don't know your geography very well, you can see the pin right there. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so everybody knows where London is, near Ontario. So you're a little bit down into this, it's not a peninsula thing, but kind of a peninsula since the US-Canada border's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're surrounded by the lakes. What does that mean for the climate? Do you get a lot of precipitation, or what does that mean?
So we get good rain. I mean, I came from a drier part of Canada where people don't really think that, but in British Columbia, it's drier than what it is here. We have a lot of more humidity in the air, a lot more moisture, more impacts from the Great Lakes. In the winter time, depending on whether the lakes are frozen or whether they're not frozen, depends on how much snow we get. So where we are, we can be in what's called the lake effect zone. So if the lakes aren't frozen, we actually get quite a bit of snow because it kind of comes over and dumps on us. If the lakes are frozen, we would just get moderate amounts of snow. So, but it snows, it warms up, it melts. You know, we don't get accumulations where you're walking through snow all the time that's up to your thighs, you know. I have seen them. We can get some good extreme blizzards, whiteouts, you know.
So what, the lakes actually freeze? You were talking about the Great Lakes here. They freeze over?
Yeah, some of them freeze. Yeah. Lake Erie is the shallowest of them, right? Of all the Great Lakes. So that one generally can freeze right over.
Huh. Like the whole way across?
That
or just out to a...
And that I'm not sure. Like, so I don't really go out there. So I don't know whether they freeze all the way across or how deep they would freeze, but I do know people are ice fishing out there. They're, you know, doing their thing out on the Great Lakes. But there is like ocean liners out on the Great Lakes. They're really oceans, right? Like they're so large. So for me, who came from a lot of puddles in British Columbia, because I didn't live on the West Coast, you know, the lakes are really oceans and stuff for me. So, you know, seeing ocean liners and, you know, cargo ships are very big. It's very different for me.
Yeah, I mean, you can get from the Great Lakes through towards through Montreal, right? Up towards, and then you get up.
Yeah, through the St. Lawrence.
Yeah, up to the Gulf, and there's a little Anticosti Island. I don't know what Anticosti Island, but yeah, so that makes sense. And did they build that? Was there always a throughway, or did they have to build a canal there?
There is a lot.
If you don't know, that's okay.
Like the canals and the water. What do they call the locks? They take them through lock channels.
Gotcha. Yeah, makes sense. Probably enables Detroit and all those kind of the places around there to be what they are and to have the industries that they have.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there. So when it's colder, the lake would freeze more. So when it's colder, you have less snow. Would that be?
The lakes
am I understanding that right?
It could be just as cold. It could be just as cold, but if the lake's not frozen, then it's not going to, it will snow more where we are because I don't know if anybody ever lives near a coastal line, especially on the West Coast where the coast, if you go to Vancouver Island, say, the snow will just kind of overpass them and land on the mainland, right? Very little do they get there. And if it does, it just melts away. So similar to here where we would get the snow, but not as much if the lakes were frozen, because it's dropping. It's not just picking up moisture from the lakes and, doing its thing. I'm not a meteorologist, so I mean.
Nor are you expected to be. I just want somebody to, if you ask me about here, I'd be like, it's cloudy a lot.
Yeah. It can be cloudy in the wintertime when it's like that. It can be socked in for a long time. But we do get some good crisp weather. But you have to know that when it's nice and sunny outside and it's blue sky in the wintertime, it's going to be cooler than it is here. But that being said, in the summertime, we can get pretty smoking hot.
Yeah, and then a little bit of cooling off, keeping it on the cooler side. I would like that, and not getting super, super hot, hopefully. Are we talking like 90s, 100s even?
100.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think centigrade, but, when we're talking Fahrenheit. So, I mean, we're talking, say, 30, 35 degrees, and then you have humidity level over that. Sometimes we get up into the 40s, with the humidity. So it can be quite hot. Funny story. Some years ago, my husband and I billeted some kids from an African choir who came in the summertime to do some performing over here with their choir. And it was in August, and they got out, I picked them up, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, it's too hot here." And I said, "You're from Africa."
Yeah, that's saying a lot. Although Africa's a big continent, are there places in Africa that are?
They were in South Africa, though. They were in South Africa, you know, but it's still like, I mean, we get hot and humid just like some of the other, you know, similar, like New York gets hot and muggy, right? We're like that.
Yeah, and you're surrounded by water, so it would make sense it would be humid there, I suppose. Yeah, and so is it flat there? Is it because you're around water, so you're not sitting on a little mountain up on that peninsula? Is it mostly flat around that area, around the Great Lakes?
Well, flatter. So, I mean, when you're talking about prairies and say like the mid US, right? That's pretty flat. But we have some hills, some rolling hills, but most of it, we have a lot of farmland around here. So, you know, and when my family comes from British Columbia, they think it's pretty darn flat around here. But I think it's beautiful. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of farmland, actually.
Yeah.
I pulled up an aerial. You just made me think of it. I didn't look at it today, but I was pulling it up the other day, and almost that whole little peninsula, if you look at an aerial, it's like farms everywhere, which is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah. So it must be good for farming, or it's just centered there for some reason.
It's really good
that's
for
interesting.
farming. Yeah, really good for farming. I think Perth County, which is just a little ways away from us, has some of the best soil in the country for growing. So they do a lot of feed corn for cows and animals. We do a lot of soybean here. We used to have a lot of tobacco, but that has kind of gone down, and people have switched to some ginseng. Now we have solar farms where we have solar, like fields and fields of solar panels.
Huh. So this is very interesting. Yeah, and even these farms then carry over into Michigan, even on the Great Lakes there, kind of. And I guess it would be a good logistics place. I mean, you can ship it everywhere via boat or car or anything also. So, and then obviously the farmland comes down into, this is interesting looking at aerials of the farmland. So fairly flat there. How far do you have to drive to get to the mountains? Do you have to go past Toronto to get to more mountainous stuff?
Yes. So if you were going up north, you could go up Lake Huron, actually, from where we are, and go up to more mountainous area. Or you can go up to Toronto, past Toronto, and, you know, Algonquin Park, the Muskokas, you know, those kind of areas where you're going to get more mountain. And then up towards Quebec, you'll have a little more hills and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Anything else we should know about the landscape or what to expect? So here's a question for road cyclists. We notice how hilly things are like crazy. You said it, there are some rolling hills, but no steep climbs.
Not a lot of steep, crazy climbs, not a lot of real ravines and like that are really crazy. And coming from British Columbia, which is very windy and mountainous, you know, I find it lovely when I find a good winding road that I can actually steer my car on and not turn a corner because it's going this way.
I feel you. And then my last question about the landscape is, I'm looking at the map here. If you drive north from London up through the little peninsula that goes like to the right of Lake Huron, and then it's Manitoulin Island.
Yeah.
Is there a ferry, or can you go across there? It doesn't appear to be a bridge.
Yes, there's a ferry.
Gotcha.
I think it's called the what's it called? The Chichimon.
And would that be the fastest way to get up there, or would you go over by like a Toronto Beltway to go up around the Great Lakes if you were going to somewhere above the Great Lakes?
Depends on the weather and the traffic. Okay, so because there's lots of highways through the Greater Toronto area. So the highway that goes from between us, so south of London through the Toronto area, is called the 401, and that literally part of that highway out just outside of Toronto, which Toronto's about an hour and a half from us, the edge of Toronto, so the Toronto airport. That is literally the busiest highway in North America. Like, it's crazy. It gets so busy, and they're always expanding it. So I don't know how many lanes wide it's going to be. I don't know. It's like 8 or 10 lanes wide right now, and it can be jam packed. So if you have something happen on that highway, you literally can be there for hours waiting, right? Because you might be between jump offs, right? But there's the 407, which is a toll highway. People don't like it. They go up, or you can go up the lake, which is a little more picturesque and have a lot of different places. And there's a lot of cottages and communities up there along the lake that are very beautiful and just stunning to see the Great Lakes up there. And on Godrich, they have a big salt mine. And so you can go down to the port, and you can look at all the big ships that are carrying the salt down and into the factories, right? So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So do most people live or work in London? Like, people that live around that area, are they working in London and the surrounding area, or do people like that live in London work in Toronto? How far is that away? Give me kind of like how far the separation is.
So we have a little bit of a mix, and I think COVID has really, really changed some of that. Toronto is one of the most expensive places to live in the country. I think Vancouver is the only other more expensive place. And so for the average person, that's really out of reach for home ownership, right? For them, the average home in Toronto is over $1 million. And so for a young family who's just starting out, that's incredibly challenging to own a home, own a car, have children. They just can't do that. So we're in this place, I can't remember exactly what they call it, but it's the drive-through. And it's really that people are driving out of Toronto and they're going, are you still with me? Because you're kind of paused. Oh, there you go.
Oh, I got blurry too.
You got blurry.
Go ahead. I'll fix it while you're going.
Okay. So literally they drive out of the GTA area and they keep going until it's more affordable. So we have the Kitchener, where we know other realtors that are from that Kitchener, Waterloo, Guelph, Ontario area, and those have really been impacted price-wise by the GTA area. And so we are now being really impacted with that. And so with COVID, people were able to work from home more, and so they would come out further and further. And so we have seen an unbelievable increase in the people from the GTA. I think they said it was more than half of our purchases last year were from the GTA area, right? People coming out from there because they can afford a home. They don't have to live in a condominium. They can afford a home here. And so it's been a big challenge for our own residents here to keep up with some of that home ownership and that. So then we do have people that live in the outlying areas who drive into London, but we also have the opposite way as well. People that want to live in the city, but they work outside of the city in different areas. So for instance, my husband works for a company that is in a little town called Stratford, which is an hour away. So he literally commutes an hour to work each way.
Gotcha. And I'm looking up stuff here. I was looking at the population. The population of London via Google is 400,000 as of 2017, it says. So to give everybody, Harrisburg is about 50,000. So London is a pretty big place. So I'm guessing there's a big downtown, maybe not as big as Toronto, obviously, but there's a downtown and an office center and office buildings, and even some of the suburbs around it probably are the 50,000 population kind of towns that even have little downtowns and office centers of themselves. So do a lot of people like live and work in the city, or is it a lot around it as well?
So London has a big educational center, right? We have Western University here, which is a huge university, has like 30,000 students. And we have Fanshawe College, which is our local community college, but has 15,000 students. So in London itself, we have about 70,000 students in a year that are residing here. So Western University abuts just similar or just offside of the downtown area. And so a lot of our downtown core, like condominiums and stuff, are really impacted by student housing. And so a lot of people have investment properties in that area. But more and more recently, we are seeing people who want to live in the downtown areas and want condominiums in that area. And so we're seeing a lot more high rises being built where we have a lot taller buildings with more stories, above the 13, 14, 18 floors, right? So we're looking at a lot bigger and more luxury condos that we're seeing being built. But in that other aspect, we have a lot of historical buildings that have are brownstone-ish or might have condominiums that are built within, 3 or 4 condos within one building, and that's it, right? Your little corporation is pretty small. So
those are hard to find. I do some commercial, and every law office wants to own their own building, but finding a nice little small office building that's not a conversion with a bunch of wasted space is tough to find.
Yeah.
So what if somebody's living outside in, say, I'm looking at a map, I don't know anything about anything, but St. Thomas, if they're living, say, in St. Thomas and they're working in London, how far would that commute be?
Yeah, so that's very, very popular for people who work in London, but they don't want to pay the prices or be quite in the larger centers. So St. Thomas is about 35,000, I think maybe 40,000 people. And it's generally has been about 25% less to live in St. Thomas than it has been here. I think that's a shift that's changing. And it really is only about a 25 minute drive into the city.
Oh, that's great. So it's similar to central Pennsylvania, your greater London area. You could probably drive the whole radius in 30 minutes, an hour-ish to get pretty much anywhere. What about, last thing I'm going to ask about the location and all that stuff, specifically is Sarnia. What's this place? Is it half in Canada, half in the U.S.? How far is that? Is that a cool thing? What's up with Sarnia?
Yeah, so Sarnia is right along the border there. It's got one of the border crossings there. We have a big bridge that goes over into the U.S., right? What's it called? Port Huron. And so it literally, it sits right on that border on the river there, or the channel between the two lakes. And so a lot of people live in that area and work in the U.S., right? The Windsor, Chatham area, the Sarnia, a lot of people that live down there. But a lot of people that live there love to be on the lake, and they have boats and they go out on the lake, and and there's a lot of manufacturing in that area, right? So a lot of people work for factories and in the manufacturing business.
And how far, what's Hamilton? It looks like that's somewhat of a big place. Is that kind of like a port town?
Yeah, so Hamilton's known as Steel Town, so they have steel mills there. It also has a lot of fruit and like orchards and wineries. It's near Niagara Falls and Niagara on the Lake, which is a huge wine area. You can buy world-class wines there and go to, you could never visit all the wineries there. But Hamilton is a larger center, and it has a lot of port stuff that's going on in there, and especially with the steel mills and stuff.
So you can see I transitioned it there to the employment thing. As you can see my tab I put up also. So what are the major employers? Obviously you have steel. That's kind of a little bit away. So people working there probably aren't living where you are. I mean, maybe, but probably not, I'm guessing. So what's the major employer around where you are, other than farming?
Well, so
or talk about farming some more too, if it is.
Yeah. Dairy, we have dairy farmers, and we have manufacturing. So we have a lot of manufacturers. We do a lot of things, auto parts, and we do have some, like Toyota has a couple of, they have a couple of factories here. We have a factory just outside in Woodstock, which is called Cami, and they do GM vehicles. So we have a lot of that. And then, funny enough, I have 2 children that both work in manufacturing, and one makes carpets for Toyota and Lexus, and the other one makes doors, right? So, there's a little bit of all that. So when the car industry was really impacted in like the 2008, 10, in there, it really impacted our area, and we had a lot of factories shut down. We do have some food factories here. different things like that. But a lot of auto parts. We have healthcare services. We have world-class healthcare services here attached to Western University. And our hospitals are teaching hospitals, and amazing that you'll go in and, you have world-class residents there that are working, and the science that is being done in that university is world renowned. And then we also have a lot of digital and technology type things. We have some gaming companies that are based here, and LG Appliances has their one of their headquarters here for their what's it called, ThinkQ, which is their Wi-Fi, kind of their techie thing that's attached to their new appliances, right? So we have a lot of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes sense looking at the map again here. I'm not going to bring it up, but it's so close to Detroit. So do they actively, like London and Hamilton and all your kind of area there, do they actively try to not steal business, but get the same business that Detroit's trying to get to manufacture things?
Yeah, and I'm not too up on who's coming and going. There's a lot of factories that are impacted from Canada because they say it's more expensive, and they go to Mexico. We have lost a lot of that kind of thing, right, to there. But it just always seems to be that somebody else comes back, right? You might have, because we have food, we grow a lot of the stuff here, and we have a lot of our own processing plants and different things like that are here. Like just down the road from me is the Dr. Oetker's Pizza, like they make all the pizza for North America is made just down the road from me, So there's always something coming. And and there's another factory that's being built, and it's a little scary to me because it's supposed to be like it's for crickets, that people feed to their lizards and their a little nervous because if that breaks out, it could be.
It's not going to be just for lizards soon.
It could be a plague. I'm just saying, it could be a plague.
They're trying to make insect protein is one of the new proteins that people are working on. And that very well
might be attached. I don't know, but we have a lot of those kind of factories. So regardless of what leaves here, it seems like people always have that ingenious, they make it work here. They bring something more to the table. And COVID also, because we were so dependent on the United States for a lot of our PPE and stuff like that through the pandemic, we then really ramped up our stuff and said, we can't be dependent on other countries as much when we have a pandemic and they're trying to take care of their people. And it's only rightfully that people are going to say, well, hold the borders. We got to, preserve our own people and our own country. And so I think that was a big eye opener for our Canadian people.
Yeah, for everybody around the world, I think a little bit of that. But for you guys and us for you guys, just you're the only ones I hear about on Clubhouse for the most part. So I tend to feel the Canadian pain and our pain too. But are there any other employers? I think it sounds like it's a good logistics place. You can get a lot of places, and that generally brings all the other stuff because you can then get the stuff other places from there. It sounds like there's a diverse employment base and colleges. You mentioned a bunch of colleges right there, and that's not Toronto. All those colleges are right there in the London area.
Yeah, right in our city. Yeah, we actually have, we have Western University is our bigger one. Then we have an all-girls university that's Brescia University. Connected to that, we have the King's College, and then we have Fanshawe University. So, and we also have some like the International Academy, which really, it's I think high school and stuff that we have kids coming from a lot of Asian and Middle East people coming over, right?
Here's a question I've never asked. I just thought of it. Do you have community colleges up there? Do you even know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so Fanshawe is probably what we would classify as our community college, but we have other ones. We have Westerveld, and we have a couple of other ones that really are like technology or like, trades oriented and different things like that. But we also have, just an hour from us, we have also a police college that's special for police officers, and they have their own little space, and it's kind of cool.
Awesome. And now let's talk about my favorite thing is what is there to do? And every episode, I should put this just as the first thing because it kind of comes up as we're talking about the stuff, but let's talk about what there is to do and what people can get excited about doing. And this would be a cool place to visit on a vacation, I would think maybe even not even if you're not moving there. So what is there to do? Is it like a water sports place or what's it like?
So London it's very interesting because we have a lot of different things and people are not afraid to try new things around here. But I always say that London's central to we're about an hour and a half from everything. We're an hour and a half from Detroit. We're about 2 hours or so from Niagara Falls. We're an hour and a half from Toronto, and we can go to the Great Lakes in 45 minutes. So you can get anywhere really easy and visit so many places that will, really they impact you in such a great way in your whole life. But we also have a lot of things within our city as well. We have a walking trail that pretty much goes through our whole city. And then we have a lot of, within our city, there might be nature trails that are right there that you can walk in and go around little lakes and different things like that I love to take advantage of because it kind of takes me out back to my country life where I can feel connected to nature, right? We have a lot of activity plexes that have really popped up in the last few years, like Kellogg's, the big cereal company. They had a factory here and they shut that down some years ago, right? There was no more cornflakes from London, none. And this building, they've taken it and they've made it into this big center, right? And they have a huge activity centers, trampolines, climbing, all sorts of things, restaurants, things people can do. I believe they're putting in a convention center in there. The Children's Museum has gone there. We do have a museum there in our city that's right downtown. It's pretty cool. They have a lot of, they bring in different things to feature within the museum. We have a lot of concerts. We have some live theater that we do have here, but we have Budweiser Gardens, which is holds about 9,000 people. So really, the first and foremost, it's the home of the London Knights hockey team. So they're part of the Ontario Hockey League, which is kind of the juniors, right? On the way up to the NHL. So we have a lot of that goes on, and a lot of those kids play in the junior hockey that's around the world. And we have concerts. We have world-class people that come here and do concerts all the time. Well, pre-pandemic, of course. And then we have some live theater where we have some great live shows that they do. But aside from that, you can drive 1 hour from here to Stratford, Ontario, which is known for its Shakespearean festival. So every year they have it's a town of 30,000 people, and they have 4, I think, massive theaters that they have actors from all over the world, the US and Canada, especially the Broadway actors, when they're off season, they come here, right? And they do a lot of big acting there. A lot of the soap opera actors will do live shows there. And so it's pretty cool because you have this big season from, I think it's May till October, where you have shows going on, live theater with class acts, a lot of really high class names. We used to go see Christopher Plummer there all the time, right? And so, it's pretty cool that you have that so close, but we have a lot of that here in London as well. And then we have the live theater, and we have some outdoor music festivals that we have right down on the lake, and they get quite a notoriety of, live bands. We love country music around here. They do.
That's interesting to know.
Maybe more so because I love country music, but that I know.
Is there a quintessential Canadian style of music that you've created or anything?
Well, have you just not known that there's a lot of Canadians that are really famous everywhere?
There are, but it's not.
Justin
it's
Bieber
pop that was
here.
Not I don't know. Rock was invented here. Country. I don't want to get in a music debate. Country, rock, rap.
Well, let's just go. Canadians invented basketball.
And you have Letterkenny, so I'm down with you.
Okay, so Letterkenny was really fashioned after a little community that's, I don't know, it's about an hour and a half listable. It's from there. So my brother grew up there. He was adopted out as a baby, but he lived and grew up in Listowel. And he told me that, and I was like, what? So yeah.
I love that show. Nobody knows what it is usually, but
I've never watched it.
oh man, I love it. And you Canadians, I could see Canadians maybe hating it because it's like super Canadian. So somebody from the outside, it's kind of fun to watch. But I think they're big stars up there. They're kind of like big comedy people,
Yeah,
I think,
what
up
was
there.
the other one? Corner Gas was the other really big thing. And that wasn't from here. That was from the prairies, right? So you have to look that one up. That one ran for a long time.
Corner Gas?
Corner Gas.
Huh. Like a gas station on the corner?
Yeah, just like that.
That sounds awesome. If it's
middle
anything
of
like
nowhere.
that's awesome. I'm gonna look it up for sure. Hopefully it's on Netflix or Hulu or something.
Must have, I don't think I've seen it on Netflix, but yeah.
Maybe I can buy it. If it's as good as Letterkenny, I'll if somebody vouches for it, I'll pay $20 for it.
Right.
So you mentioned stadiums or concert venues, and you said pretty big people come. 9,000 seats is not like a huge stadium. Nope. So what about like the Justin Bieber, who is from Canada, or who else? I can't name any others.
Well, Justin Bieber, I mean, he's done some stuff here, but he more would go to Toronto, I think. But he does do stuff here because he was born in London, but he was raised in Stratford, where that big festival is, right? So literally you go an hour from me. They have like outside of one of the theaters, he's got his little star there where he used to busk, stuff. We got lots of history on him. Anyways, but so we have like Taylor Swift was here. We have some of the big names. I think right before COVID hit, we were supposed to have Jamie Foxx was supposed to do a big show here as well, right? So
comedy?
Yep.
He's touring? When was it? When?
No, this was right. He was canceled right as COVID hit. So we haven't had really anything going on because Canada's been under lockdown for so long. We are just opening up here, right? So we've had.
So is it? We could touch on that right now a little bit. This is October 18th, 2021 for anybody that's listening or watching later.
Yeah.
But tell us how it is right now. Are you opened up? People can come visit.
Yeah. So we are starting to open up more and more. So we have restrictions, and we still have mask mandates. That you have to have mask mandates. You're allowed to go. They've opened up to people who are double vaccinated here, right? So a lot of people that if you're double vaccinated, you have to have proof of vaccination, and then you can go into what they call essential stores without having that proof. So you can go to grocery stores or you can go to the mall, things like that, to buy your essentials for life. But to go sit inside a restaurant, you would have to have proof of a double vaccination. To go to a concert or a sporting event, different things like that. Or to go on a plane, you have to prove all this vaccination, right? And a lot of people have to have that just for their work. I don't want to get into political things, but it's been quite a thing because some people have been laid off because they don't have their double vaccinations, and that's not in their belief, right? Or whatever they feel. That's not their conviction.
Sure.
So it's been,
what is, without getting political about what does double vaccination mean? Does that mean one of the ones that takes 2 shots, or does that mean the 2 shots plus then the booster or whatever that is?
No. So we're just getting to the place where they're going to offer boosters, but the double vaccination would be, we don't have the one and done here. We just had 3 that were approved and 1 was pulled back. So we had Pfizer and Moderna, and then we had AstraZeneca, and AstraZeneca was pulled back because of some of the cautions that we had seen. But now we're starting to see a 3rd one that people are starting to get offered, more for the seniors and more high risk people. So we are in good numbers for our COVID, but we did have quite a bit. But Ontario itself, like every province is different, right? Just like every state is different. And we have quite a high rate of vaccination here. So we're seeing our numbers continually go down and going the right way. So hopefully soon we can start to see more. Now we're hearing you can go across the border in your car, whereas you could only fly before, which is kind of weird. But I've heard that you have to pay for the test to come back into Canada that's going to cost you several $100s, right? So
several hundred.
Yeah, like I saw a post from a friend of mine, and so to go to her family, because you can see in Canada, in Ontario, some of the northern places are more accessible if you drove through the US. So if you were going to save yourself 6 hours of driving, which is a lot, and go through the US, to go back through would cost your family, I think she said a family of 4, that were going to cost her $2,200 to get vaccination tests done. I was astounded.
Yeah, that's crazy. So when you visit Niagara Falls, you want to stay on the Canada side and don't go over on the other side, right?
It's nicer on our side.
How far did you say how far the drive is? How long to get there?
2 hours, about 2 hours.
Perfect.
In good traffic.
And if you visited there, would you stay there overnight usually, or would that be a day trip thing typically? Either or?
Depends. You do. We can go there for a day, or we would come and go and stay overnight. We've gone there and stayed, like New Year's. They have a big, huge New Year's party, and you can go there and stay there. It's pretty cool. They have outdoor concerts and stuff like that, and that. But a lot of people go and they make a weekend of it because they do Niagara Falls. They go to Niagara on the Lake, which is a small community, the touristy community, and then it's all surrounded by wineries and stuff. So a lot of people go and do wine tours and different things like that there.
And do people mix Toronto into a visit to Niagara Falls a lot of times? People from outside that are coming from far away. You might not, because you can get to both easily, but.
Yeah, and it's pretty hard to do both in one day, right? Like, because Toronto's very big. Like, I think the whole GTA area is something like 15 million people. So it's a lot of people, right?
Gotcha. And then now I lost my notes. Driving vacation.
Yeah.
If you were driving to a vacation, where would be the go-to spot? Here in Pennsylvania, we go to the Jersey Shore for the most part, or maybe Maryland or Virginia Beach or something. So where you're obviously not driving to that kind of to a coast probably. So what's the go-to driving vacation?
Gosh, I think people have cottages. So depending on where they like their cottages, they might have cottages on Lake Erie. We have a lot of little coastal communities that people have cottages or boats on. And then we also have cottage country, which is up in Simcoe area, Lake Simcoe, and we have, the Muskoka is where they have there's a billion different kind of little lakes, and everybody has cottages up there, and you have boats, and they're all the lakes are connected with locks and channels and different things like that. And they go up there and they go to Algonquin Park, which is, for me growing up in British Columbia, drive was, 6 to 12 hours for us, right? So for here, 4-hour drives, not so much, except for when you have to go across Toronto, I kind of tend to refer to it as the beast in the middle, because you never know what's going on with the traffic there. And it could delay you several hours if it's not good, right? So, but people they mostly want to go to the lakes and they go do their thing there and they do that, or they will go for down to Niagara Falls and go there. A lot of people pop down to the US when we can, of course, and they'll pop down into Detroit or go down, Chicago even, because that's only 8 hours for us,
So how far would it be to the Algonquin Park?
That's quite a drive. And, I've lived in Ontario now. Here's my...
And for the U.S., that's like a national park or a state park or whatever.
Yeah. So it's like, it's a good drive from here. It's a good 10-hour drive, I think, from here. Okay.
And it's pretty mountainous and
it
looks like there's water everywhere. There's lakes everywhere in that whole area.
Yeah, it is. It's a big camping and tourist place to go. I literally have never been up to Algonquin Park. So I've lived in Ontario for 13 years and I've always been in the South. But my husband, he's a bridge builder, and when he supervises them, and when he goes up there, he'll be like, "You need to come up here with me because it's BC up here. There's moose up here and everything."
Awesome. Does he hunt? Did you say that?
No, he doesn't hunt. No, he doesn't hunt. I grew up with hunters though, so I'm very aware of what that world's like.
I'd like to go hunting where I don't actually kill the thing, because I don't want the thing, but stalking, being out in the woods, aiming and tracking and doing all the stuff sounds super fun. If I could just like hit them with a paintball or something and be like, I got him, and just move on with my day. A little bit anticlimactic maybe, but you got to haul that thing out of there then too. You have to like chop it up and put it on your back. Yeah. It doesn't sound very fun.
My growing up was crazy because I lived off there. My father was a hunter, so he would drive us to school in the mornings during hunting season and have his gun in the car with us. And we had to go through that mountain road to get to the bus. And, usually 1 or 2 days of each year we were late for school because my dad shot a deer, right? Or an elk. That was my world.
And that's actually good to know. I'm glad we touched on the hunting and fishing and all the outdoor stuff, especially that, because the deer hunting and fishing here is a big thing here. So anybody moving out of here is going to look for that.
Fishing is big here. You can actually charter some big boats on, especially Lake Ontario and that, where they have big charter boats, and you can go salmon fishing on those lakes. My husband does that with a lot of our kids, right? All the boys in the family, they go charter once a year down there and do their fishing derbies and, things like that.
That's awesome. And like I said, if you pull up a map, anybody, and start looking at the area, you'll see a lot of farms right around London. And then as soon as you go kind of up into that towards the national park or the provincial park, there's water, there's lakes. It seems like every couple miles there's a lake. So that's awesome. And we've got about 4 minutes now to touch on what people can get for the money. Less than 4 minutes, actually. But we can talk about that. Let's do 2 minutes and then we'll do an outro. So what's the average price point there?
Well, the average price point for a house in London right now sitting over $600,000. We have our real estate board is London St. Thomas area. So we have quite a bit of an area. And in September, the average house price was $690,000.
Okay. And if you were buying something downtown London, what would you get for that?
So mostly those are condos. So depending, a little 1-bedroom condo in just an average building, you're probably looking at just over $300,000, and then your condo fees, which could run anywhere from say $300,000 to and up, depending on what you have. If you're having a home downtown, depending on the area, it could be quite pricey.
And then what about how much would people have to spend to get that, like a 3-car garage, 4 to 5 bedroom, kind of like I hate the term McMansion, but kind of the starter mansion. Here, you're looking at maybe 700, half acre, quarter acre. I know you're going to say more than that, but so what am I looking at? Maybe new versus a resale, 3-car garage, 4 to 5 bedrooms, 3,000-ish square feet. In a subdivision,
looking at 1.2, 1.3, and also depends. Like our resale necessarily aren't much different than our new builds because of we have such demand, right? We have literally less than 2 weeks of inventory on our books, so we have everything that comes on sells.
Like here, I'm glad you brought that up. So it's still like that there.
Yeah, cooled off a little bit in the summer, and we've heated right back up over the fall. Very aggressive.
Great for sellers, and interest rates are still good. So still a good time to buy also. And waiting doesn't do you any good because the prices are still going up. And the next house you buy is going to be based on the last one you sold, plus another bit that you have to pay over to beat the other people. So waiting doesn't really do you any favors either. And the crash is not coming. There is no crash coming. Off my soapbox now. So what are the age of the homes? So in London, here we've got a lot of old stuff on the East Coast. Typically our downtowns are like a 1900 to 1920 kind of built stuff. And then the further out, it gets into the 40s, 50s, 60s, 90s, 2000s. Is it kind of the same deal, or how far back do you go?
Yeah, so London, from the 1700s and that area where we had started, but we have homes that are 120 years old. But beyond that, you're starting to get some real breakdown, right? But we do have some whole heritage buildings that have been rehabbed and they're beautiful. We have a couple of different areas where you have larger homes and, and the Victorian style homes and then the mid-century homes. And then we start to go out to the little wartime home bungalows and different brick. We have a lot of brick here, a lot of brick. And then we go out to the more of the neighborhoods and we have some gated communities, but not really gated. They're just more like a driving community, like what I live in. And we go out and beyond that. And now we're entering into the farmlands. So we're taking over farmlands.
Yeah, same here. It sounds very similar. And if you do look at it on your map, like you mentioned, you're down here almost not quite Pennsylvania, but not very high up there. And a lot of similarities between the two. We literally have 10 seconds. So what do you want to be when you grow up? And then I'm going to hit this button. If you could do anything else, what would you do? You got 10 seconds to answer.
I'd just be travel. I would be a professional traveler.
Travel agent. Thanks for being with us, Dania. Say